What's up everybody? I'm Victoria. Today's tutorial we're going to go over a standing forward fold. So we'll talk a little bit about the glutes, the hamstrings, and your torso-spine relationship to the pelvis in this standing pose. So when you're ready, let's go. Alright, so I have a mixing bowl right here, and I want you to just imagine that this bowl is just like your pelvis. So your pelvis is the kind of bony structure that we commonly refer to as our hips. So this is your pelvis shining straight forward. It would kind of look like this. So you can kind of imagine that the rim of the bowl are the bony frontal points in your hips, and you can kind of move your pelvis around and you kind of see how the bowl can pour down like it's pouring water out, or you can lift your bowl up towards the ceiling. And so with that analogy, we're going to take this ruler and imagine that this ruler is like our torso. So there's a couple different movements you can do here with your torso and your pelvis. So if you're stacked right on top of your pelvis, you can stay in one line with your pelvis. So that means as your pelvis shifts forward, your torso moves with the pelvis. Same if your pelvis shifts back. The other movement you can do is keep your pelvis stable and move your torso inside of your pelvis. And that would kind of look like if I was standing up and I keep my pelvis stable, but I just move back and forth, or maybe side to side, you know, without really moving the pelvis. You can see my pelvis is stable, but I can move my torso. When we do a standing forward fold, we're going to combine those two movements. Our standing forward fold will begin with one movement of the torso and the pelvis together, and then we'll just move the torso without moving the pelvis. So let's see what that looks like. So I actually want you to kind of get a sense and a feel for your pelvis. So I want you to take a stand here and bring your hands to your hips. And I want you to wiggle your fingers around, kind of dig under the flesh, and see if you can find those two bony protrusions. We call them the frontal hip points usually in yoga. Those are bony points in your pelvis. And what I am going to do is I'm going to take sticker dots and place them right where mine are, just so you can get a sense of where they are. And so mine come right here. All right, so you can see those two movements we found in the bowl. I can keep my dots stable here, and I can move my torso and my spine without moving my pelvis. Or I can move my pelvis like I'm pouring the bowl forward and move my torso with the pelvis. And so let's explore that in the standing forward fold. Standing forward fold, here we go. Stand with your feet hip width distance apart here and really firm up your thighs. So I want you to feel like you're pressing your feet straight down into your mat so your thighs get really solid and firm. Make sure your toes are pointing forward. Now bring your hands to your hips. Find those bony points in your hips and bend your knees just a little bit here. And then we'll take a big inhale. And then as we exhale, here we go. So we're going to move the torso and the spine with the pelvis. So as my pelvis shifts forward, like the bowl pouring forward, my torso moves in the same line. Good, and I'm about halfway here. And I just want to check in with my glutes and my hamstrings. They're feeling a little tight. So I'm going to bend in my knees a little more. You can bend in your knees as much as you need to. Good, and now I'm going to just keep moving on down. So I'm still pressing my feet down into the mat, into the ground. Good, and I'm pouring my pelvis forward. My torso stays in line. And I'm going to stop here because I can't continue tilting my pelvis anymore because my thighs are actually in the way. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to remove my arms just so you can see this. My pelvis is not going to move. Now I'm just going to move my spine and my torso. So I'm going to start to round my back here. And you can see that my pelvis isn't moving, but my torso is moving inside of my pelvis. And I'm just going to come on down into my forward fold. From here, I can leave my hands down on the mat, or maybe I grab my forearms, just kind of making a window, And I let my head just hang here completely in gravity. I can shake my head out no, just to make sure I'm not holding any tension in my neck. And this is my forward fold. If I decide to bend my knees a lot here, then I'm going to feel more of a stretch and a lengthening in my spine and my back. And if I straighten out my legs a little more, then I'm going to feel more sensation in my glutes and in my hamstrings. So depending on what your goal is with this shape, you get to kind of play around with that and decide. All right, standing forward fold. So when I'm ready to come out, at first I want to align my torso with my pelvis. So I want to get the rounding out of my spine. So I'm going to lift up just a little bit. And this is where I sense that I'm in line. And in order to be here, I actually have to use a little bit of abdominal muscle. So feel your ribs hugging together just like they do in downward facing dog. Now I'm going to bring my hands to my hips, my pelvis, find those bony points in the front. I'll bend my knees and then I'll continue rising in one piece. So as my pelvis starts to rotate up, my torso comes with it and I slowly come to a stand here. So a couple of things to keep in mind in your standing forward fold. You can bend your knees as much as you need to accommodate your glutes and your hamstrings. So there's no rule or law in yoga that says you have to have straight legs. So just check in. You definitely don't want to pull anything or damage anything just trying to fold yourself in half. The other thing is, if you feel like your back doesn't feel very comfortable rounding in, you feel like that's pulling on your back, then don't round. So what that might look like is you start to come into your forward fold and you pour your torso in line with your pelvis. And once your pelvis can't rotate anymore, then that's kind of where you stay and hang out. And this is your forward fold. You don't have to round your spine in anymore. You can bring your hands to your shins just as a little support to keep yourself elevated. So your forward fold is more like a V shape instead of rounding your back. All right, so let me know if you have any questions about standing forward fold. Leave a comment below and I'll get back to you.